customer centricity should be part of your brand?
Amazon has been saying it since its inception. I think Emirates' campaign recently is about don't upgrade your seat, upgrade your airline, because all the that's what, and I think that's a real tip of the cap to customer experience.
This is Challenger Brands, helping you build better brands and businesses. Hosted by Illustrado, the brand development and creative agency for ambitious and audacious challenger brands.
Welcome to another episode of Challenger Brands, where we help entrepreneurs and brand custodians build better brands and businesses. I'm your host, Lalencio Benitez, Managing Director here at Illustrado Brand Development and Creative Agency. And today we're going to be talking about CX, something that not a lot of people really understand, but I'm hoping that our guest today will shed a lot of light and help us apply these things, these new insights into the way we work and hopefully allow us to achieve success. And before we do that, we would like to thank first our supporters, Rove Hotels.
This is Challenger Brands. Please subscribe to our channel and share our content. Follow us on our agency's social media pages, Illustrado.co, on LinkedIn, Instagram, and Facebook, or subscribe to our newsletter via our website, www.illustrado.co. Thank you to our sponsors for today's episode. Rove Hotels. Rove Hotels are a jumping-off point for city explorers, simply designed for the young and young at heart. Born in Dubai, Rove is an award-winning lifestyle brand offering well-designed hotels, fuss-free service, and great value in well-connected locations. More than just a bed for the night, Rove provides rovers, the missing link to connect you to the city like a local, and explore the track less trodden in a relaxed environment where you can be yourself. With sustainability, local art, and high-performing functionality at the heart of its brand, Rove represents a new niche of hospitality for the digital nomad looking to become part of the neighborhood, even when they're just passing through. Please check them out at rovehotels.com.
Joining us today is Mark Hamill, CEO and co-founder of ARCET Global. I hope I pronounced that correctly, Mark.
Absolutely, yeah.
ARCET, ARCET.
Whatever you want to call it, honestly. ARCET Global is how we said it.
ARCET Global. Yeah. So let me just tell everybody about your company. So ARCET Global is in the business of business excellence and customer service. And Mark has been there for the last 15 years, right? And, ARCET Global has been running one of the largest CX award programs in the world called the Customer Centricity World Series. And through his company, Mark has been empowering a lot of businesses to achieve success by making sure that they are customer-centric. And I'm hoping today, Mark, you're going to teach us about CX and how it can help companies.
I hope so, yeah.
Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
Mark, to begin with, can you tell us about CX? Let's start from the basic. Let's start from the foundational knowledge. What exactly is CX?
Well, if you're looking at sort of a definition perspective, it's all of the interactions that you have with the brand. So from the discovery phase, your first interaction, all the way through the service. If it's a website, your interaction, user experience that you would have with that, and then through purchase, repurchase, service, support service, these kinds of things. So every interaction with the brand is customer experience. And I guess people do confuse it or mix them up with customer service. But customer service is very much a core component and more important for certain industries. Like if you're talking about hospitality, airlines, these kinds of businesses is probably even more important. Retail, but it's a component of the overall customer experience.
I mean, a lot of companies throw this term around, right? We are CX oriented, we are customer centric oriented, but in reality, they're just talking about customer service. Whereas it should be, like you said, across every touch point, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think customer centricity is the ultimate goal. An organization that is truly customer centric, and there aren't many in the world. I don't even know if there would be any I would consider truly customer centric in the UAE even as brands. But in terms of improving customer experience, there's a lot of companies spending a lot of money, time, focus on that, and they are improving. I think from living here for the last 15 years, the government is probably one of the best examples from how far they've come and how much they're investing in it and focusing on customer experience and excellence. I think they're really focusing on that. But in terms of service, being the misinterpretation again of what customer experience is, it is very important and increasingly important for certain industries, but it isn't the be all and end all. If you have, the best customer service, but your website doesn't work,
That's also CX, right?
yeah. So these are the kinds of things, that's a very basic example, but yeah, you'll remember that as a customer.
Definitely. So, what are the hallmarks of a company that has a good CX policy or a good CX program?
I wouldn't say necessarily a policy. I would say initiatives that they would have. Leadership, it comes from leadership. Leadership have to focus on making their organization more customer centric and supporting people within the company to make decisions that are of benefit to the customer, not just financial decisions. And then also listening to customers from a qualitative, quantitative perspective, and listening to frontline staff as well, like actually listening to your staff to understand where the challenges are, what could be improved. I think those are some of the simple things that you could do, and any size company can do that really. So that's the thing, and I think it kind of gets mixed up with how much you invest in technology, but really it needs to start at that point. You need to know who your customers are, where they are, what they like, build the products around them, and then you can build the sort of services and customer journeys around them as well.
So, would you say that the entire company needs to be geared towards CX, right? Because again, we're thinking about CX, customer service, but in fact, it's everybody in the company, right? Would you say that that's true?
It needs to be. It needs to have that, yeah. And I mean, there's examples that I can give you, but like we had a masterclass quite a number of years ago, but it was across multidiscipline. So it was with a bank. And when you think of bank and you think of customer experience, you're probably thinking in the branches, right?
Yes.
Or on the call center, in the contact center. This one had people from the finance department, from compliance, from you name it, that department was represented. And the person from compliance on the first day of the masterclass was sitting there, arms folded.
This has nothing to do with me.
This has nothing to do with me. Why am I here? After the second day, at the end of the masterclass, they came up to us and said, "This has been extremely helpful. I had no idea the impact of my communication and my approach to saying yes, no to loans or whatever it may be, the impact that had on the end customer and how it affected my colleagues as well." So it doesn't just affect the people that are like directly involved with customers. It's back office staff as well. They need to realize that their decisions impact their fellow employees who are internal customers, and the impact that can have on the actual end customer as well.
Let's have a simple case study or whatever, in a small company situation where you have the sales department or business development, the marketing team, you have admin, and then you have whoever's taking care of the product or service delivery operations. How can these departments become more CX oriented? What can they do?
I think an example of what I've seen work well across disciplines or across departments is definitely to have like champions within each department. So a simple thing you could do is, driven by the CEO or perhaps someone that is lending influence from the CEO, they can be the front person for CX, and then they can appoint champions within each department. So for example, finance could have someone who's the representative, and every week, every 2 weeks, whatever it may be, is then able to report on what they've done or what they think would make an impact. And then as long as they have a means of measuring that impact in place, then they will be able to make these incremental gains and see big improvements. But even on a sort of anecdotal basis, I'm sure they would be able to make some changes quite quickly.
Because I think at the end of the day, operations or everything that the company does really leaks into the product or the service, right?
Yeah.
So whatever is not fixed internally will spill out eventually outwardly.
Or the one thing that I think this is more of a pet peeve, and we've all experienced it, is when internal speak goes out to the customer, and it's like, it doesn't really make sense in the context of dealing with a customer. You get sort of given a response which is like, that's definitely something you just talked about in the meeting and what you want to do, and to get out of the customer rather than actually helping me as a customer. But yeah, I think definitely from a internal communications piece, they need to focus on the importance, keep banging the drum that customers are important, and the reasons why are because if you have good customer experience and it improves, your profits will likely improve as well. That's ultimately
Definitely
the benefit of it, right? If it's done well. So, and also, I think one thing that I think companies look at when they look at investing in customer experience is they see it as a cost, when actually, if customer experience is done well, you will eradicate processes that you don't need. So it is actually a lean approach to running a business, or should be, if it's done well.
it is an investment,
Yeah.
basically, right? Because if
Yeah.
you don't take care of your customers, they're not going to come back to you.
Yeah, exactly.
So if you want to build a loyal customer base, this seems very obvious, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
This seems very obvious. If a company wants, they've never had a CX policy before or an initiative, are there any, foundational steps that they can take? What will be like their basis for building a strategy? How do they build a CX strategy in a company?
Well, one thing is that the leadership have to be convinced. So my good friend Ian Golding talks about the alcoholic phase of customer experience with leadership. So they have to first identify that they have a problem in order to fix things.
Okay, I love how he says that, the alcoholic phase. Okay,
So-
self-identify.
Yeah, exactly. So
Yeah.
that's what they have to realize, that they may not have a problem, but they can always improve or see value in it, and then make decisions that will lead to improvement. So they need to realize that first. And I think there's enough content out there that they could start listening to podcasts, watching videos on YouTube, going to events. There's plenty of customer experience events, learning more about it first before making the decision. I think that's what I would start with. But again, it's making sure that you have the right sort of internal people or champions keep banging the drums. Strategic communication around the topic is important internally. I think a lot of things can, whether it's customer experience or other initiatives, if the communications is not happening internally and you're communicating that change is happening, things are getting better, then the sort of momentum can dry up.
I'm just noting that down because I'm thinking this really has to be a very, very systematic approach, right?
Yeah.
Because it has to be strategic. It's not something that you flippantly say that, okay, we're going to do this and there's no plan, there's no real system behind it.
Yeah. Because then you'll invest the money and time and effort, and there's no way of showing any results. So it has to have a really sort of measurement-backed approach to it, so that you can say, actually, this is what happened. Our customer satisfaction score went up by X. This led to Y profit increase or retention of business, whatever your metrics you decide to use, or multiple metrics. And then so you have to start with that in mind, that it is a systematic approach. But there's a good friend of mine here, Craig Lee, who used to be head of customer experience for Emirates, and he says that customer experience is an art and a science. So although there is a science behind the measurement aspect, it's still people that need to actually make the difference, right?
Well, it's about people, right?
Yeah.
How would they get started in terms of KPIs? You've spoken about metrics. So what is worth measuring, and how do they go about it?
I really, it depends on the business, but I really value the quantitative, but the qualitative piece is really interesting, like really understanding the insights from certain interactions, and then that can drive trends as well. So for example, you can see that X number of customers said that this was a problem when they dealt with this branch, or whatever it may be. I think that's something that maybe isn't talked about as much, but there's some really good companies out there very much specializing on the qualitative side. But quantitative, that's the one where the CFO and the people that'll be the CEO, the people that'll be investing in the customer experience initiatives, programs, whatever you want to call it, they'll see the impact. These are the numbers, and this is what the impact was. So you kind of have to get that right and really understand the return on investment, what you're trying to achieve essentially, and then working back from that. So it depends, but I mean, customer satisfaction and something to measure. NPS is something, some people love it, some people hate it, some people are indifferent, but that's something that's very popular, and there's a number of other metrics out there.
Now let's talk about awards, because I think awards are something that's huge in ARCET Global, right?
Yeah.
What is the role of awards in CX?
Well, it goes back to what I said about the keep beating the drum and showing that you're making these changes, and the momentum will keep going. So we offer a platform for organizations to submit their case studies on what they've been working on. Look at it in a systematic approach, which is what they set out to achieve, how they did it, who was involved, and then what the results were. So across multiple categories. So that gives, and companies enter awards for different reasons. Some people companies just want to win. Some want it for their team, for motivation. Some want to learn. Some want a mix of those things. So it really depends on the company. But yeah, we offer like benchmark feedback reports afterwards. They can see where they fit versus their competitors. You get the feedback from the judges. So it's very transparent, I would say.
I mean, I've seen you and your team members in action, especially, for example, in Raquez, and then we've seen you at the Dubai Silicon Oasis. And I know that you do a lot of these customer centricity initiatives, especially events.
Yeah.
And I've seen, especially in Ras Al Khaimah, how vibrant the community is of entrepreneurs, having entrepreneurs, close to 100 entrepreneurs sitting for one day, listening to educational lectures and whatnot. I think this is great. How do you motivate people, and what does that initiative look like?
In terms of the content and offering that?
Yeah. How do you bring all these entrepreneurs together?
I think we're very lucky that for the last 15 years, me and my team have built up a very large community of specialists. Like you said, then, you've spoken at some of our events before, twice in the last, few months. And because of the nature and the quality of our network and people that can offer great value, I think that's the magnet for getting people to come and learn. Like we really make sure that we curate the content, make sure the speakers are well prepared, make sure they can add value, and there's something in it for the speakers as well beyond just turning up to the event.
Of course, yeah.
It's perpetual. So I think if you have to have that sort of they're there to learn, but there's always going to be some sort of value that they can get from that. And as you said, the community with our clients of entrepreneurs that do attend these events, they keep coming back, and then they recommend someone else, so it keeps growing.
Exactly. I mean, like, for example, Ras Al Khaimah, we all know, is a little bit sleepy, right? So to be going at a venue with almost close to 100 entrepreneurs, and that too, this is not just the general public. These are actually people who own and run businesses, right? So to me, that's very significant, and it's vibrant.
Yeah.
What have you learned, doing this for Raquez and Dubai Silicon Oasis and for other companies? What have you seen as a trend doing these events for these clients or these customers?
I think it needs to be a bit of a mix. You always have to add value in terms of the content, but the networking opportunities need to be there. So it's really just making sure you continue to add value. We listen to the feedback as well, the feedback that we have from the customers. If we're talking about customer experience, there's surveys at the end of these events as well. But yeah, just continue to add value. We ask what topics they want to have, and for future events, for example. So we're always looking at adding value, making sure that our end customer are our clients, but their customer is the attendees, right? So need to listen to both parties, make sure that they're satisfied.
Definitely. What would you say what would be common mistakes that people would commit in terms of CX? So we've seen the good part. I've seen it in action with you and your team. What would be a mistake or a shortfall?
I think number one, and just not listening. I think not listening is terrible.
That sounds so basic, but it's so true. It's
so true. Everything you do, like you're in marketing and branding, if you don't listen to your clients, what's the output going to be? I mean, the reality is they're not going to be satisfied. It's going to be a lot of back and forth.
Definitely.
So I think not listening, and I think that's endemic in this market. I really do. I think that's one of the biggest challenges and frustrations in all of our day-to-day lives is like you ask for something and they interpret it in some way and give you back what they want to say rather than listening or hearing you properly. I think that's on a sort of basic level. But then the impact that can have is on a sort of systematic approach is you probably, if you're an organization which historically has lots of people that aren't trained in customer experience, trained to listen, then that will probably lead to products being produced that aren't relevant, services being produced that aren't relevant, and probably not very successful business at the end of the day.
So listen to your customers.
Listen to your customers. Sounds really basic, but I mean, that's just for me. Like, as a customer, if I'm dealing with like even a basic thing, if I go to a restaurant or somewhere and they're not listening, that's, you're not going to go back probably.
Exactly.
Right?
So that's basic. You can't claim that you're customer centric if you're not listening to your customers. And as a matter of fact, I think you should seek the feedback actively, right?
Absolutely, yeah.
It should be something that's proactively done.
Yeah. Well, I'll just give you an example. As a really good customer experience, we stayed in a place called Santara Mirage Hotel just over the weekend with my family, and you could really tell that every single person, even, and I think in this, it's challenging in this market as well, where you have so many different stakeholders. So you have security as a different company, you have, you know, whatever, the facility management, different company.
Of course, yeah.
And that creates challenges of an inconsistent brand. But there, I don't know how they've done it, but it's like, I was really impressed. Every single person was attentive. Every single person was well-trained. So that was something from my, just talking about a good experience, that was something that was excellent this week.
That's excellent. Okay, before we continue, I think we're just going to say thank you to our supporters, Rove Hotels. Thank you, Rove.
This is Challenger Brands. Please subscribe to our channel and share our content. Follow us on our agency's social media pages, Illustrado.co, on LinkedIn, Instagram, and Facebook, or subscribe to our newsletter via our website, www.illustrado.co. Thank you to our sponsors for today's episode. Rove Hotels. Rove Hotels are a jumping-off point for city explorers, simply designed for the young and young at heart. Born in Dubai, Rove is an award-winning lifestyle brand offering well-designed hotels, fuss-free service, and great value in well-connected locations. More than just a bed for the night, Rove provides rovers, the missing link to connect you to the city like a local, and explore the track less trodden in a relaxed environment where you can be yourself. With sustainability, local art, and high-performing functionality at the heart of its brand, Rove represents a new niche of hospitality for the digital nomad looking to become part of the neighborhood, even when they're just passing through. Please check them out at rovehotels.com.
Mark, can you tell me about the role of technology in CX?
It's a very broad question, but yes,
it is. Yeah,
no, but it is a broad topic, absolutely. So, I think the way that I've seen it over the last few years, it's gone from very much to be led by the customer experience leaders within companies like CXOs, heads of operations, what have you, and it was much more focused on the measurement side of things. I think with the advent of the last sort of 2 years with AI, increasingly a lot of that budget is getting shifted from investing in, let's say, technology for measurement tools to more sort of contact center and conversational AI, chatbots, email bots, WhatsApp bots, what have you. So that is significant, that shift. And that's affected customer experience. It's affected customer experience leaders as well. And I don't think that's going to change. But what I would say is that I still don't think that there are many good examples out there of companies doing that well. So they might have the technology in place, but have they designed the conversations that they want? You know, are they actually prepared to offer this experience for customers? I'm not sure. Yeah, it's quite there yet, but the technology is definitely there. There are some great bits of technology out there that can really help companies and take away. Really, it's about taking away the mundane tasks, so humans can focus more on the more difficult ones, the ones which require listening.
Of course. But how do you feel about AI in terms of CX, right?
Yeah.
So instead of a person now, you have AI answering you with all these chatbots and, you know, these freely available technology, right?
Yeah.
How do you feel about that? Do you think it's a positive thing or is it a negative thing?
It could be both. I mean, if it's done well, it's incredibly positive. If it's done badly, it'll annoy you and you'll never want to go back. So I don't think
That's
there's
true.
much in between, really.
One of my pet peeves, Mark, is just picking up the phone and trying to get to a company where
Yeah.
nobody will speak to you except
Yeah.
the answering machine, right?
Yeah.
So it can be frustrating at times.
It can be frustrating, and it doesn't have to be that way. It can be, ultimately, it can be, if it's done well, you can get whatever your inquiry is dealt with much more quickly, or it takes the pressure off the contact center with the people that work there. If it's a quick inquiry, really frequent inquiry or query that you might have.
If it's an FAQ, you can get it quickly, right?
Yeah, exactly. And it should theoretically free up the people that you have to deal with more complex tasks. So in theory, but is that the way it pans out? I mean, last few times I've dealt with my business bank, it's been very difficult to get in touch with them, and that's just with their normal IVR system. It's not with a chatbot. It's just takes forever to get to a person. It's trying to deflect away from speaking to people, it seems. But AI in general, it should be embraced in customer experience. It really can make a huge difference.
It
but
can really help.
you have to do it well. You have to do it right from the beginning.
Do it well, definitely.
Yeah. So one of the things that we're partners with a company called the Conversational Design Institute, and that's what they focus on. Is they focus on creating really excellent conversational design, so that when the technology comes in, it's after the design has been done. If that makes sense.
I love that. Yeah.
So
it doesn't. I mean, it's not frictionless totally, but there's probably less friction if the conversation is designed in such a way that it feels right. Yeah, it feels natural.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's an example from one of our partners called Cognigy. And when the pandemic hit, they were working with Lufthansa, and they've been working with Lufthansa on their chatbot for many years. And I think all of us were affected by flights being cancelled that we had booked or whatever, refunds and all this, because they had this chatbot and this successful deployment for a couple of years. Instead of the contact center being completely overloaded,
Yes.
they were able to use a chatbot to refund everyone. So it saves
that's amazing, yeah.
millions in terms of, and they've got many examples like that, but yeah, it can be.
That's an amazing case study. So instead of people calling, manually or whatever, having these tools, technology, it's amazing. You can reach so much more.
Yeah. And even things like agent assist is one of the things that AI can be used to in the contact center, for example. So when you call up as Lalaine for your bank, the bot would simply ask you who you are, put your details in, and then that would go straight to the contact center agent when they know exactly who you are.
They already have details.
It saves time, yeah. So it saves a huge amount of time. That's a really basic example, but
that's very good.
Yeah, so just start with and also start with the use case of like something simple, so that you get a bit of momentum and
Exactly.
buy-in. But don't try and do everything. Like, we all know that some companies are trying to get rid of people and replace them, and that's the fear for a lot of people. But it shouldn't really be that way. It should be, again, going back to getting rid of the mundane tasks for people, so that they can focus on more complex.
Step by step, yeah? Walk before you can run, I guess.
Absolutely, yeah.
During the pandemic, did CX change?
Absolutely.
What's the impact of the pandemic on CX, and how did you see, the world of CX changing in the last couple of years?
I think there's positives and negatives, I guess. One of the positives, I think, has definitely shifted a lot more to online. People are more comfortable purchasing online. I think companies have all had to try to improve, or at least say they're going to improve their digital experience. So I think that's a positive. And even smaller companies should be mindful that the customers that they have are probably users of some of the big applications and websites out there. So to improve your user experience to a point where it's something similar or familiar, I think that's something. But I do think that because of the pressure financially on companies, customer experience has gone quite a bit backward in many cases. I think that, and what's the term, shrinkflation on certain, an example of like, well, a chocolate bar that is now the same price, but it's a quarter less. That's a very basic example, but I think that's happening with loyalty programs around the world. I think it's happening with just general, you're getting less for your money. And customers aren't stupid, but it's so endemic that most companies are behaving that way. So if there is a company out there that is really offering more, value for money, I think they do
It
stand
should
out.
be the opposite, right? I mean, because the market is in a more challenged situation,
Yeah,
and there are more people competing, more businesses competing, then you should do better
yeah.
by your customers, right? Where it's the other way around.
It certainly seems that way. That's my experience. That's what I hear
Yeah,
customer
when
experience
you
leaders
think about
talking
it, it
about.
sounds crazy.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. So I think it is getting worse. More people are aware of it, and these things probably go in cycles. But I think it is more financially driven decisions about that's impacting CX for now. But yeah, I don't know
Yeah.
what the switch will have to be to
Yeah.
get things back on track.
Yeah, we were chatting about this earlier, and the way I see it, I don't see CX mentioned a lot in the SME or even medium or even some of the bigger companies locally, unless they're really disciplined, right?
Yeah.
And like you said, maybe it's an investment thing. Does CX have to be expensive, or is it something that even small companies can delve into?
I think small companies should absolutely be at the advantage, take advantage of the situation, because if the leader becomes customer centric and really focuses on that, the change that they can make, culture within the organization is much quicker, and they're much more agile than a big
I
company.
like that. Yeah,
So that's
they have simpler structures, right?
absolutely. So it's I forget the exact quote, but TripAdvisor CEO said that startup or an SME has a completely universal competitive advantage against a big company because they can do things quickly.
Yeah.
So TripAdvisors try to behave like a startup. I know a lot of bigger tech companies say that, but they roll out things, and if it doesn't work, then or they tweak it and fix it and whatever. But bigger companies like banks or insurance companies, they don't really have that luxury, whereas a small to medium business can change things quite quickly. They have
Exactly.
smaller teams. They can say, right,
Definitely.
this is what we're doing now. We need to train you on this, and you'll see the impact much more quickly, I would say.
Exactly. So for medium SME, business owners out there who are listening to the podcast right now, what are the 3 go-to things that they can do to kickstart a CX program in their company?
I would say first of all, have the motivation to do it. Be inspired to do it. Or so if you're not already inspired, but you think it might be the right thing to do, as I mentioned a bit earlier, go and watch some podcast or listen to some podcasts, watch videos on YouTube, attend events on customer experience. It's kind of a bit of a strange industry where it's almost like evangelical, where people have to, there's some people that are very so passionate about it that it is inspirational. So I would start with that, and then look at how you can, put the systems in place within your company, and make sure as well your people are trained in order to actually deliver this or to make this change, because it's not everyone can be customer centric in my view. I mean,
That's true.
that's the thing. So they need to be cut out for it as well, because some companies will be doing quite a significant change, but also you can benchmark and do assessments out there. There's assessments from the International Customer Experience Institute, for example. They have assessments on customer experience, so where you're at or company we
That's
work
good.
with.
So you can have an audit to begin with. Yeah.
Yeah, like a gap analysis, and then a company called Market Culture who we work with, and they do from the employees' perspective how customer centric they believe their organization is. But that's a good starting point, very accessible for any leader. But these are some things out there that just to see where you stand first, and then you might think, oh, actually I knew that, but that one I wasn't aware of. We'll need to focus on that. So that's something to consider.
I love that. Mark, now, before we close this podcast, please tell us about, ARCET Global. Maybe you have some projects that you would like to invite people to. When is your next Customer Centricity Award happening? Is that open for everybody? How can they participate?
Yeah, so we're very much in the final stages for our next Customer Centricity World Series, and that's going to be in Amsterdam. So we have that on the 12th of November. So companies can attend online or in person, the conference aspect of it. But in terms of entries, we're definitely closed for entries. The judges are already nearly finished scoring. But we have the AI World Series, which is going to be taking place in Dubai Silicon Oasis
Okay.
on May the 8th next year. And we have, companies, small, medium, large, can enter into those awards. It's a real leveler the way that we do our awards, because it's looking at a case study, initiative, story, campaign,
Yeah.
rather than the company as a whole. So we've had many small companies that have won the big prizes against the bigger companies out
I
there.
love that.
So,
It's a great motivator.
yeah, absolutely.
It's a great motivator.
Yeah.
Final tips to companies out there.
I think when it comes to customer experience, it's very much about making sure that the leadership are engaged and making sure that you set out with your what you want to achieve, and putting the measurements in place there to make sure that when you do make the changes, is it making an impact? Internal communication is always important. So, and especially for small, medium businesses, I think these are the things that we're very lucky that this is what we can do. We can control this. But if you start with that in mind, get the leaders engaged, or the leader has to drive it, certainly. Listening to your customers, building products and services around customers. I know it sounds simple, but if you do all those things, I'm sure you're going to make improvements.
Like I said earlier, this should be part of the branding exercise.
Absolutely.
Definitely. Customer centricity should be part of your brand.
Amazon has been saying it since its inception. I think Emirates' campaign recently is about don't upgrade your seat, upgrade your airline, because all the that's what, and I think that's a real tip of the cap to customer experience. That's what they're trying to achieve there. So I think if you do focus on it, but if you say you're focusing on it in your marketing and your brand, and then you don't offer it, then that's a different story. That's
Definitely.
Yeah.
It's super necessary. It's a must.
Absolutely.
It's a must. Well, thank you so much, Mark, for joining us today and sharing all these bits and pieces of insights and information. I hope our listeners and our watchers can get inspired.
Excellent. Thanks for having me, Lanley.
And all the best to your projects.
Thank you.
The World Series sounds very exciting. Maybe we'll think about that next year.
It's got nothing to do with baseball.
Exactly. Customer centricity. So just wrapping it up for all of you out there, guys, if you don't have a CX project or a CX initiative yet in your company, you can do it. Okay. First of all, learn about CX. There are so many resources. Mark has provided some that we can check out. Get inspired. Make sure that the leadership, all you leaders out there, entrepreneurs, business owners, please, 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 this is your project. Get some champions in all of your departments and start communicating. Put that CX project, moving forward. And thank you so much. Thank you.
Thanks, Lynn.
We'll see you soon, Mark. Thank you. Thank you to everybody. We'll see you in the next podcast. Bye now.
Please subscribe to our channel and share our content. For more actionable insights on brand and business building, follow us on our agency's social media pages, Illustrado.co, or subscribe to our newsletter via our website, www.illustrado.co.